Today I'm sitting down with Sonita to talk about one of our favorite Christmas movies, Elf. We'll talk about the journey getting this film from the page to the big screen, the influence of old Rankin stop-motion movies, how they made the film, and how Jon Favreau's laser-focused vision resulted in Elf becoming a timeless classic. But more than anything, we'll talk about Will Ferrell's groundbreaking performance, how it almost didn't happen, and its role in launching one of the most iconic comedic careers of all time. But for now, sit back, relax, and welcome to my film club. So today we're going to do one of the big-time classic movies, Elf. And Sonita, you as a big fan of Christmas movies were the perfect person to have on. So tell us, what is it about Elf that you love so much?
So it's set in New York, which is my favourite place. And I just find it really funny. And I've watched it, I think, most years. So what was your relationship with the movie?
So mine's a bit of a weird one. So I heard about it only when I was about 20. And I heard about it in like the most random way. It was I had a group of friends. And one of the girls, I don't even remember in what context she did it, but she did an impression of the narwhal, the unicorn monster, right when he's about to leave, when it goes, "Bye, buddy. I hope you find your dad." And even though I didn't know the movie or the quote, I just thought it was really hilarious, and she did it really well. And it's not like I then immediately went to watch it or anything, but I just knew of the movie through that one quote. Maybe I'd seen a clip of it or something. And then I watched the movie after that and really enjoyed it. But if anything, I thought that she did it better than the actual voice.
That's
But
worrying.
yeah. But that was my entry quote and entry experience into Elf. So I only watched it in my very early 20s, which was, in fairness, only 7 years after it came out. But yeah, I definitely didn't see it as a child. But I think that's an interesting thing that I can still appreciate it a lot, because I think there's a lot of movies. There's movies you see as a child and you don't appreciate as an adult. There's movies that you see as a child and appreciate as an adult. But it's hard, these kid movies, to have one that you're kind of supposed to see as a child and appreciate it only as an adult. But for me, it falls in that category. Home Alone's another one that we'll do one day, because I think I had seen it at least once, but you saw that over and over as a kid. Whereas I've seen it 90% of my viewings have been as an adult, but I still really like it. So the movie was released in 2003. It was from a script by David Berenbaum, which he originally wrote 10 years before in 1993. So we're going to talk more about that in the script section. It's a very actually interesting story about how a script went from one person's mind to being made, with lots of changes along the way. It was inspired by Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, specifically the Rankin Bass version from the 60s. Are you familiar at all with Rankin Bass?
No.
It's interesting because this movie is a classic for millennials, but this is a very important influence from the 60s by the people who made it, but means very little to us because it basically was a stop motion animation studio from the 60s and 70s that did a bunch of classic Christmas movies, including Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And the right guy who wrote the script and Jon Favreau were very much inspired by this very unique style of stop motion. And so all the North Pole stuff is very, very based on this particular style. But I'll tell you more about that in the production. One of the reasons why the theme of family is such a big thing is because the guy who wrote it lost his father when he was young. So that was a very important theme to him. It was directed by Jon Favreau. It was only his second directing movie. But a few years later, he did a small movie you might have heard of called Iron Man. So a very important stepping stone in his career. It made $229 million on a $33 million budget. It was the number 7th highest grossing movie that year in the US. So it was a big deal. Would you like to guess the critical reception, starting with IMDb?
Let's go with in the 6 range, maybe 6.1.
7.1.
Oh, that's quite good.
So high up there, but not quite top 250 range. And then Rotten Tomatoes, critics, audience. What do you think? / which one do you think is higher or lower?
I think probably the critics around 70 something, maybe 76, and then audience maybe 80.
So audience 79.
Okay.
So very
Not
close.
too, yeah.
But critics 86.
Oh, okay.
So the critics did really like it.
That's good.
I think everyone just appreciated the fact that it was a silly Christmas movie, but that was high quality still, which is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
It inspired an actual kid's book called Buddy the Elf, which is kind of the one they show at the end, which got made into a real one. It also became a musical. Have you ever seen or heard of the musical?
Oh, no, but I can imagine
Yeah.
that going, yeah.
So it was on Broadway from 2012 to 2024, and it was also in the West End in 2015, 2022, 2023, and it's playing right now in 2025 in London.
Is
But
it?
yeah, I know I was surprised by this. I looked it up. You can buy tickets and stuff, but it's not something you see widely advertised or anything.
No.
But
You'd
yeah.
think this time of year, especially, you would see it.
Yep. So it stars Will Ferrell as an unproven star, which is a crazy notion by today's standards because he's just been, to us, he's always been a star. We'll talk more about him in the cast, but Elf and Old School were his two first starring roles and his first two big movies after leaving SNL. So it was like it was a huge gamble by him to go so big on this movie, but also a huge gamble by the studios to put him in a starring role.
Mm.
So that's a really interesting crossroads of, in terms of time, in terms of the director, in terms of actor, both Will Ferrell, but also lots of the other people who are in it with him. And then in terms of genre, it's a very classic. Are you familiar with the term fish out of water genre of movies?
No.
So it's a very specific type of movie about someone who's taken out of their familiar environment and then dropped into somewhere very unfamiliar, usually a comedy because comedy ensues. Other very known examples of this are Big, Paddington, Coming to America, George of the Jungle, Crocodile Dundee, or Legally Blonde. So, Stina, who would you recommend this movie to? Who should watch it? In what mood?
So I think it's basically it's kind of like a family friendly movie, but then the older I get, the more I realize that it's for a lot of adults as well. Maybe anyone who has like, complicated family dynamics, like a father and son situation. And then just anyone who likes Christmas or New York.
Or Will Ferrell,
Yeah.
or just good comedies. Yeah, I've got it as a cozy, funny, silly Christmas movie, but with heart.
Hmm.
Good. I think in terms of if you were literally when to watch it, I think because there's certain Christmas movies that you want to watch maybe on Christmas Day or Boxing Day or early. For me, this is a Christmas Eve or maybe even the week leading up to Christmas because it's. We were saying this earlier. It's it's a real Christmas movie. It's not just a movie that happens to be Christmas adjacent. It really takes place because the whole ending of the movie is on Christmas Eve. So I
Yeah.
think and it's dark. It's at night. So at the ending. So I think it does feel nice as something that you would watch actually on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to cross the spoiler line. So we've tried to kept it high level for now. I guess actually the one thing we haven't done is what is the synopsis?
It's about an orphan called Buddy who is then raised in the North Pole around elves and believes himself to be an elf until one day he realizes he's not. And he then goes on a quest to find his father.
Yeah, in New York City. And
Yeah.
yeah, comedy ensues. So now we're going to cross the spoiler line, which means that now we're going to talk about the plot, we're going to talk about the ending, we're going to spoil everything. So if you haven't seen this movie or you've seen it and you can't remember it and you want to refresh yourself before hearing us talk about it to no end, then we recommend you pause here, but make sure to subscribe first and go watch it and then come back and listen to the rest. I think one of the first things to say about this movie is it's 1 hour 31 without credits, which is just a great duration for a movie.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Do you agree an hour and a half is the perfect duration?
Yeah.
We saw the new Naked Gun and actually the old Naked Gun. They're like an hour 10, an hour 15, which that's almost too short, but still fine. Better to be too short than too long. But yeah, an hour 30, but it's well paced. And I think the longest scene can't be more than a couple of minutes. So yeah, it's really good. It's listed on IMDb as so many genres. It's holiday, family, comedy, adventure, fantasy, and romance. Which of those types stands out as like the one it is most to you? Like, what is it first and foremost?
Adventure. I think adventure and
Okay.
comedy, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say comedy. I think more than anything, it's just a funny movie, and then just everything else builds well around it. But
Yeah.
most important thing is that it's funny.
Yeah.
Agree on the adventure, and then yeah, we said that it's very much a holiday movie. Like it's very Christmassy, and yeah, it's definitely very family. The romance is definitely at the bottom.
Yeah, I don't think about it as romance at all.
And yeah, it's cute. I think one of the key things that we're going to talk about is the fact that I think the story is good and it makes sense. Because I think these movies where there's so many just gags, you need to have a strong story to string it together. Because
Yeah.
otherwise it is just, an oaf just going around doing silly things. And you're like, well, I don't care about him. I don't know why he's doing it. Whereas here, there's a reason for all the silly things. So it starts off with Papa Elf. So that's Will Ferrell's adoptive father in the North Pole. So who's an actual elf, who basically sets the scene. He kind of creates the world that we're in, where Santa exists and elves work for him,
Mm.
and basically gives the rules of the elves, and you see the workshop, and you really get that first introduction into the world they live in, which is, and it's a very unique world. I remember this the first time I watched it. Like, it doesn't look like anything else you've ever seen, a representation of the North Pole, and
Yeah.
this goes a lot to this whole Rankin Bass thing about how they had a very particular style in mind and they went for that. So for us who aren't familiar with it, I think it's very unique. So it's kind of giving us the mythology of the type of elves they are, but mostly it's just introducing us to the visual. Like, this is what Santa's workshop looks like. This is the type of toys that they build,
Mm.
and so on. So then we get introduction of Buddy as a baby. So how he's in an orphanage and he crawls into Santa's bag, and then he makes it to the North Pole, and Santa adopts him. And well, Santa gives him to Papa Elf to adopt. Then we get Buddy growing up, which is quite funny. I think this is the first of the comedy of like, this is a funny situation. There's a scene which I think the first time you watch it seems a bit random. They spend a good 2 minutes explaining how the sleigh works and about how it runs
Oh
on Christmas
yeah.
cheer and all that. I really made a point of seeing in this time how long it lasts, and it's a good couple of minutes. So like, lots of exposition, and obviously if you're rewatching it, you know that it's very important for the plot at the end about the fact that Buddy's the only person who knows how to fix
Yeah.
Santa's sleigh, because spoiler, he saves Christmas by doing that. Then I think our first favorite scene is Buddy is showing Buddy as Will Ferrell just not fitting in.
Yeah.
So there's like the visuals of him in class and stuff. But then I think both our favorite one is when he's become a full-fledged elf and he's working on his quota. So do you want to tell us about
Yeah.
that scene?
Yeah, where he's trying to make some etch a sketches. I never really know what they're called.
Etch a sketch.
Yeah, etch a sketch. And it, I mean, to you or I feel like it seems quite impressive that he would make so many. But then, is it Papa Elf that's coming along and checking the quota? No, no,
No,
it's
it's
not
his
Papa Elf.
boss.
It's his boss.
It's
Yeah,
Uncle
it's
Zing
his.
Zing or something
It's
like
like a
that.
supervisor or boss or whatever. Yeah, comes along and asks how many Buddy's made, and I think he says 85, and that's in that day, which obviously I'd be like, oh, that's amazing. And he's like, oh, everybody else has done like hundreds, and obviously he's like,
900.
yeah, he's slowing down the team or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of the first snapshot into like him failing as an elf.
Then the next thing after that, kind of at his punishment, he gets demoted to Jack in the Box tester, which you
Yeah.
also find really funny.
Yeah, yeah. It's the. I think it's like quality control or whatever, making sure that the Jack in the Box is actually going to jump out. But obviously then he like is quite scared of the fact that it's going to happen, and you can see him wincing. Honestly, as someone who watches a lot of horror films, you would think I'm not scared by something like that, but it is the anticipation of it coming. Anyway, he thinks he's found a broken one, and he's all cocky about to make the notes, and then it just jumps out at him.
It's also a really good first. I mean, to be fair, both those scenes, like when he says, "How many have you made?" and he goes, 94, and he's just crestfallen, and just like his facial expressions, and then similar in the Jack in the Box, it's such a him just wincing and then getting surprised and then doing it over and over, and like you immediately see is like, oh, this is, if you were watching this movie for the first time back then, it's very likely you've never seen Will Ferrell before, and this movie relies so much on him that I think those scenes are really important to establish that, oh, this guy's funny even if you've never seen him before. And then I think it's right after that he figures out that he's not human. He overhears someone saying, "Oh, well, if he hasn't figured out now, he's never gonna figure it out."
Yeah.
And then there's the funny flashbacks of like his entire childhood of things that just didn't make any sense. So it's, for example, like him in always being too big for the toilets, or him sleeping across multiple beds, and him just not fitting in. And obviously it's funny visually, but it's also funny that, wait, so it never occurred to you until this?
Yeah.
Which again established it that he's not the sharpest tool in the shed.
No.
But yeah, I think obviously these bits are all funny, but I think they're really important building blocks, as I said, to make the movie actually meaningful. And it's a really hard balance to get enough of this that you care, but also not too much. Because you don't want to spend, especially when you're rewatching it, you don't want to spend 30, 40 minutes in the North Pole. You want to get the show started. And so they do spend about 18 minutes, which I think is just the right amount. But then, yeah, he finds out that he's human. Santa explains the situation, that he was an orphan, that his father didn't know that he existed, that he now lives in New York, that he's on the naughty list.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
And then they do a brief introduction to the dad, Walter's intro, which shows him with basically he's a book publisher, kids book specifically, but he is the grumpiest man in New York, and he doesn't care about anything. And obviously we knew this because he's on the because he's on the naughty list. Poppy, you're gonna make a cameo
Unbelievable.
appearance because he's on the naughty list. But yeah, then we see why he's on the naughty list because he doesn't care. He's put out this book called The Puppy and the Pigeon, where there's 2 pages missing in the middle that ruin the whole story, but he just doesn't care. And I think literally the first scene of him is him telling a nun that they're going to take back books because they can't pay for them. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you can just imagine if you ask ChatGPT, how do I make someone see evil? It's like, make him take books away from a nun orphanage. So he's the worst. But Buddy still wants to go meet him, and so he says he's briefed on New York City. Santa gives him some really strong advice about don't eat the gum.
Yeah. Oh my yeah.
What was the other
Oh
piece?
no, wasn't it? I think wasn't it? Don't eat yellow snow.
No, so don't eat yellow snow is the snowman who says that to
Oh,
him,
okay.
which is
Yeah.
funny as well.
Yeah.
But so so after Santa, then he says goodbye to his local friends who are not elves. So there's Leon the snowman, who I've had this with so many movies, and this is what I love about doing this podcast. I think I even said this time, it's like, this Leon the snowman is very random. Like, why do we need to have a snowman who looks like the Colonel from KFC
Yeah.
talking with him? And so it turns out he is very heavily influenced by the Rankin Bass snowman called Sam the Snowman. And that snowman was basically an imitation of the Colonel, because he not only looks like the Colonel, but he speaks with like a southern accent as well.
Yeah.
So basically, this snowman being a copy of the other snowman was also going to imitate him. So that's why we have him. And so all of the kind of animals there, they might almost seem like they're a bit there as filler, but the reason is it's an homage to the Rankin Bass.
Right.
And these are all characters that existed in that, and so it would make sense that because he lives in that world, that he would be friends with all of them. And then obviously we have Narhol, who says the final goodbye, the bye, buddy. I hope you find your dad. And yeah, and again, a funny thing is that his mode of transport to get to New York City is just get on a little piece of ice
Yeah.
and float off.
Why not?
Have you ever given any thought to his journey that he goes on?
You mean how it looks in the film, or just generally
Just
like
geographically, the route he took.
Not really. I mean, he looks like he's walking through some wintry mountains for a bit, and then I all I remember is that he comes through the tunnel, but I don't really remember much else.
So he goes on the piece of ice for a bit, then lands, and he basically seems to walk in forest until he gets to the Lincoln Tunnel. So I did a little bit of research, and I found that it is actually, if you put aside the fact that obviously it would take him months or years of floating on the ice, and then months and months to walk or whatever, put all that aside, it does make sense of the route he takes, because he would float from the North Pole on the iceberg, which is how, if you had a piece of ice that detached there, it would flow south into Canada. Then it would land somewhere in Nunavut or northern Quebec.
Oh.
So it's a northern part of Canada where a piece of ice would land from the Arctic. And then if you walk through the Canadian boreal forest, you would basically get to the US border. You could travel that whole way just walking through forest.
Right.
And then more or less you could get close-ish to New York. So yeah, totally realistic.
Oh, perfect.
But then the New York arrival, so there's some really good scenes here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's just like having the best time in New York, but like not for the reasons that any normal person would. Some of the things I was remembering is like there's a scene of him jumping across the like zebra crossing, just staying on the black like you would as a child, avoiding like the cracks of the pavement, and he's having a great time. And then he's like running around in circles in I don't know what those, just a revolving door, just a revolving door, which obviously, I mean, for anyone that's been to New York and worked in New York as well, you'll know that people just want you to get out of the way in those doors. So the fact that he's just there enjoying it and running around in circles is quite funny. And then the picking the chewing gum off the subway railing every time. He seems to be enjoying himself, but it's really hard to watch.
Because there's other things later that he tries and is like, ew, but this he's like, ooh, I like this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then the elevator buttons as well. The guy that gets in the elevator with him in the Empire State Building has the patience of a saint.
I was about to say, in New York City, 90% of people have just punched him in the face.
Yeah.
So here's a fun fact about all of these scenes. So they did what we call guerrilla filming. So it wasn't a case of they shut down these streets and had a bunch of extras. They basically put Will Ferrell in costume and were like, just do a bunch of funny stuff and we'll just film you. Apparently something like coming through the Lincoln Tunnel, it was the real Lincoln Tunnel with real traffic. It was just him in costume and a cameraman filming him doing the whole thing where he goes along the side.
Oh my God.
And then a bunch of these, it is just like the people you see around are just normal people that
didn't know they were being didn't know that.
No.
Wow.
Yeah. And apparently, there's the one bit where he goes up to this is the perfect epitome of this bit, is the guy that he thinks is Santa. He's dressed all in red.
Yeah.
That was just a real guy. They saw him and were like, "Oh, just go up to him," and he did. I don't know if maybe if you see his face, they'd probably maybe have to get him to sign a release form
Mm.
after. But yeah, a lot of it is just real stuff that was done,
Oh
which
my
makes a lot
god.
of sense because otherwise it's kind of one extreme or the other. You either do it super cheap and easy like that,
Mm.
or you have to shut down entire streets and then have hundreds of extras. So
Yeah.
it makes it even funnier now to think that all of this stuff.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
actually, the escalator bit as well. I just remembered where he doesn't. He's obviously never seen an escalator before, and there's people that are sort of collecting at the bottom as well. They must have known.
No, probably
Really?
not. I mean, maybe they were told we're filming something,
Yeah.
like because there were obviously cameras around, but then they said just act normally. And apparently, like there isn't as much improv in this as you would think, because Will Ferrell is known for improvising stuff. And even in this, he claims that he did one shot where he did the script, and he would do one shot where he sort of improvised. Even though he did improvise a lot of the lines that we'll see later they were actually scripted. But I think a lot of the physical comedy, a lot more of that was improvised, and apparently that hit the escalator bit where he sort of stretches out. That
Yeah.
wasn't in the script. He was like, just let me do this. And they were like, yeah, that's funny. We'll keep that.
Wow.
So yeah, messes around. Like this is really funny. Then as you see, then he goes to visit his dad, who works in the Empire State Building, and that's when the elevator thing happens.
Yeah.
And then the Christmas gram.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that whole like scene of him basically coming in and the what is like the receptionist woman? I can't remember what her name is,
Deb.
but Deb. Okay, Deb, who like doesn't really have that many lines, but I feel like that first thing that she is that the first phone call where she's like,
Yes.
"Oh, I don't know how to declaw 9 kittens" or something like that. Like, how many is it?
So it's eight kittens to declaw, and but she also says, what I had missed until I was researching SDA, she just says, okay, you can drop them by my trailer. So
Okay.
I went on a deep dive last night on this, so and I have the explanation because everyone is just fascinating about this line because it's completely random. There's no other follow up on it, and it's the obviously declawing is bad. Why is she being asked to declaw eight kittens? Why does she live in a trailer when she's
Yeah.
presumably a somewhat well paid secretary in New York? So the origin of this crazy line is basically she's a lot of the people in this are proper stand-up comedians, and she was one of them who's who like Will Ferrell, they came up in doing sketch comedy and improv.
Right.
And apparently Jon Favreau said he wanted to give the sense that this office was just kind of all over the place.
Mm.
So he said to her, she's like, we're gonna just do a shot of you on the phone call, just make up something completely random and weird. And they probably did a bunch, and that was the funniest. And you know what, if the assignment was be random and weird, mission accomplished.
Yeah, she did it.
So it kind of reassures me that there is no logic behind it. It's just meant to be weird, and
Yeah.
it is.
And it is because it sticks in the mind.
And
Well,
there's another bit that's even more random and more weird that we'll talk about later, which is the exact same thing that was just like complete improv.
right,
But
right.
yes, do you want to set us up? How do we end up with Buddy singing to his dad?
Yeah, so the Deb welcomes Buddy and assumes that he's been sent as a Christmas gram. Which, by the way, I get the sentiment, I get what it is, but I never really knew that that's what it was called before. So presumably that someone had, as a joke, paid Buddy to go and sing some sort of Christmas song to Walter Hobbs. So he walks into Walter's office, obviously so excited to see his dad for the first time, and Walter's just like, "Oh, okay, like get this over with," thinking it's going to be like a 1 minute sing song, and then like off he goes, and that's when he starts singing to him.
Yeah, because he doesn't know what to sing.
Yeah.
He just goes, "I'm here in my
Yeah, oh,
dad's
yeah.
office."
Oh yeah, no, that was it. He was like, "Well, aren't you going to sing me a song?" And he's like, "Oh, okay." But that is like the sort of song that if you were told quickly make something up on the spot and you literally don't know what to do, it's singing, but it's not. It's just
It's saying
elongating
words.
words. Yeah, yeah.
Because he is a terror. He does a couple of singing bits in this, which
Oh.
he's just the worst singer, but in the funniest way possible.
Yeah, he gives like 10 out of 10 effort.
Definitely.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that he definitely calls him dad almost immediately. Yeah, Walter doesn't actually pick up on that for at least 5 or 6 times. It's only when he gets really weird and doesn't know what he's doing, and he's like, "You didn't know that I was born, and now I'm here." And then he mentions the name of the mum, who obviously was someone
Yeah.
that he had dated 35 years before. But that's when he's like, "What the hell is going on?"
Yeah. Susan Wells.
Susan Wells. I don't know if you noticed at the end when they have the kid, the name on the hat is Susie. So
Oh,
the
I
little
didn't
kid is named after
notice.
the
That's
mum.
cute.
Yeah, it's like one of those cute details.
Oh.
So yeah, freaks out the dad, tries to explain to him. The dad's having none of it, kicks him out. The Empire State Building security drag him out. Fun fact, one of the security guards there, Will Ferrell's brother.
Oh,
Yeah, there's a lot of little like random people, like small roles like that were actually family members. There's a, early on when you see Buddy as a baby, I think it's when he's not when he's on the tricycle. Maybe it's when he's sitting on the lap of Papa Elf, but he's already really big. That
mm.
was Jon Favreau's actual 1 or 2 year old baby.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's quite cute.
So after getting kicked out, he goes to. Oh no, that's it. One of the security guards said to him, "Go back to Gimbals." Gimbals didn't exist at the time, but it is a real department store that did exist. It closed in the 80s, so they chose it because they wanted to have something that evoked actual Christmas department stores, but they didn't
Right.
have to worry about any of the legal ramifications, like for example doing Macy's.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So he's like, go off to Gimbals because someone dressed as an elf could very well be working at Gimbals. And to be fair, he fits right in. Everyone immediately thinks that he works there.
Yeah. I mean, his elf costume is a cut above the rest, obviously, because he's a real elf. But yeah, he fits in more there than anywhere else.
So yeah, gets to Gimbals, meets the manager, Wanda, according to his badge, and meets Jovi.
Is it really Wanda? The like angry black man?
That's the name on the badge, but there's
Oh,
a
right.
story behind that as well.
Oh, right, okay.
So it was meant to be Wanda Sykes that played that role, but she
Okay.
dropped out last minute. And so the story goes that the badge was already made, and then they brought in this other comedian who's very good, and he kind of was he didn't mind wearing the Wanda badge because he thought it'd be funny.
Hmm.
Funny story. But my question is, if it was going to be Wanda Sykes, why would she have a badge as the character that has
Yeah.
her own name?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's true, or maybe that because it was going to be her, they thought it would be funny to give him that badge as like a little Easter egg. Either way, that's the reason why his badge says Wanda.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, he is perfect in that role. He's just so like exasperated by everything that Buddy does. And it wasn't he like shopping for lingerie like when he gets caught and then like Wanda drags him up to the
Yes.
Gimbals floor. That's like how he meets
I
him.
think, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, I definitely know that Buddy at one point sees because it says on the sign for give this to someone you love.
Yeah, a special someone. Yeah.
Which is just funny because later on he gives it to his dad.
Yeah.
But yeah, the manager's really funny, especially later on when things go well and he gets like, okay, we're all on the same team. Here, call me on this walkie if anything happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, meets Jovi and what is it? He says, I'm so happy to find someone that's so enthusiastic about elf culture as me. And
Yeah.
she just is like, what? She very much represents how we would all react. Like, she's not horrible to him, but she's also like, dude, you're crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, she's like I think the part where she seems to sort of actually get a bit more on board with it is when he really pisses off the Wanda, I guess his name is. And what does he say? Wanda's like, "Oh, make work your what does he say? He's like walking off and he's like, you wouldn't get that in the North Pole, and Buddy's like, yes you would, yes you would, or like whatever it is, he's like answering back to him, like showing a bit of sass. And I feel like at that point she's just like, wow, you really are crazy, but also that must be the most depressing job. And it's obviously the first time that she's like actually had fun
Yeah, it
while
cracks a
she's there.
smile.
Yeah.
Obviously, Walter is the biggest character arc of the whole movie. He goes from being like the devil,
Mm.
who's taking books away from convents of of orphans, and then by the end, he's a loving father to his 2 kids and everything. But I do think it's a lot narrower, but it's very distinct how she evolves, how she goes from being this, kind of depressed, like fuck my life woman, and he brings a bit of sunshine into her life, and even there, that first smile, and it's often with when you have her character. I'm getting ahead of the characters here, but it's very unbelievable that she would ever like him or fall for him. Whereas I feel like here it's totally believable
Yeah.
because it's gradual enough and it makes sense. Because if your life was as shit as it seems like her life is, having someone who's a ray of sunshine, being nice to you, wooing you in a
Mm.
mostly respectable manner, yeah, it would be nice. I
Yeah.
think. Then decorating Gimbals, which is one of our favorite scenes.
Yeah.
Me, I just love the logistics of it, the amount of work, everything he does. I question whether he would have been able to do it in that time, but I just love the
Of
transformation.
course he could. You saw how many etch a sketches he
That's
made.
true. No, you're right. He does.
He's used to working behind, in terms of
true.
productivity.
You're right.
So I think put him in a pool full of bog standard humans, and he really excels.
Plus, we've seen him with his snowballs. Like clearly, he can work quickly.
Yeah, but yeah, it's such a joy to watch things like that. Like, I mean, and also as someone who's not very creative, I think watching somebody pull something like that together in a short space of time and having it actually look good, like he's not doing anything crazy. He's using what's around him, but he's just being able to, make something
Imaginative.
special with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
And then then the next morning, before everyone sees what he's done, the shower scene with
Oh
Jovi.
yeah.
So this one is considered. I think it's one of those that was probably controversial 5, 10 years ago, and then now everyone's chilled out. What are your thoughts on it? Should it be controversial?
It kind of is, but I don't like to think about. I think, yeah, I just don't like to think about it like that because if you said like a man sneaking into a lady's changing room or shower, like uninvited, and like he stays outside, obviously, but because with him, he's got this like there's no ill intent and it's like completely innocent and he just wants to like sing and stuff. I mean, it is still creepy, but I just don't want to think about it like that because it just it's so innocent in
Yeah,
the
I
film.
watched it with the lens of is this creepy? And again, I totally get it, especially from a woman's point of view, that it's not a nice image. But as you say, he stays very much away from it. At no point does he peek
No.
in. She's the one that like looks out at him. And to be fair, as soon as she does that, he like covers up his eyes. And I kind of think, and this is an important one for the other questionable thing later on in the film, is he's in the wrong, but he kind of gets his comeuppance. In this case, he like kind of runs into the door, into the locker room, and like gets knocked out
Yeah.
or whatever. So yeah, it's not the best thing, but he doesn't actually do anything intrinsically creepy, and
No.
she seems to be okay with it afterwards once she realizes it's him. And
Yeah.
it's just a bit of a shame because it is meant to be this cute moment where they sing together.
Yeah.
Apparently, I saw conflicting things about this. On the one hand, people say that this scene wasn't there before, but then we really realized Zooey Deschanel could sing. They added it, but then others say they chose her because she could sing. So the point is, it was an important part of the story that was linked and was very much linked to Zooey Deschanel's casting.
They could have maybe, if they were trying to not make it creepy, which obviously, like, whatever. I don't think it is, but a lot of people, I can see why people would think that and why she would. They could have had her singing in the shower, and maybe there was like, the lockers were in like a separate bit or something that he, can sing from, not right outside the shower by the sinks, but like it could have, because there was no one else there. They didn't need to make it that he like is sort of right on the other side of
So
it.
that's a great point, but I think the key is that the scene still needs to end in a funny way of him getting
Yeah.
caught and making an idiot of himself, and that only works if he's doing something that's not socially acceptable.
Yeah, I
so that
guess
she
so.
gets to scream at him, and so you kind of need him to do that.
Yeah, okay.
Because otherwise it would just be like, oh, it's a cute scene, and they're singing together, and then end of scene, it'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that's true. There'd be no running into walls
Exactly.
or screaming.
Then he gives the dad. This is kind of just a throwaway scene that he gives the dad the lingerie because he receives it as on the mail and he's not there, and he's like, "What the hell is that?" And then Santa Claus, Santa. I think actually, he does that before decorating, right? Because he hears Santa's coming, and then he's like, "Oh, I have to decorate because Santa's coming."
Yeah.
So yes, decorates, shower scene, lingerie. Then Santa arrives, and he's disappointed.
He's a fake. He's a fraud. And Buddy is just trying to let people know this guy is not Santa. I've met him, I know him, and it's not this person. And I think that's also one of my favorite scenes, possibly because it has one of my favorite lines, which I don't know if we're going
Go
into
for
it now,
it.
but where he's completely realized this guy is a fraud, and he like leans into him and he's like, "You sit on a throne of lies."
So good.
It's like it's so dramatic, but also you would, if you were him, you would feel that way.
Yeah, I mean that's an example of one that was probably scripted. I'll talk more about who wrote and rewrote the script, but I'm sure in the script that Will Ferrell was given, that line was there. But yeah, he just delivers it 100% with 100% conviction. Like
Yeah.
he hates that guy. He's
Yeah.
like, "You are everything I stand
Yeah.
against in this world."
Yeah, and he's like really trying to protect everyone around Santa. It's not just about him. Like he says to the boy that sat on his lap, "Don't tell him what you want. Don't tell him what you want for Christmas." Like it's not him. As if like you tell this person what you want for Christmas and your life is going to be over.
Exactly.
It's like it's so over the top. But
It's probably
perfect.
actually the only time in the movie he's actually angry. Isn't
Yeah.
it? Which, again, I was analyzing all the things last time we watched it about why Will Ferrell is so good at this. And he displays pretty much every emotion in this one way or another from the point of view of this silly character. And anger, he's at every bit, and every time he goes to an extreme. So when he's extremely sad, like with the quota, it's really funny. When he's extremely happy, like we didn't even mention the congratulations on the best cup of coffee in New York.
Well, that's technically in one of my favorite lines.
Favorite
so,
line, okay.
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, so when he's like really happy, when he's really angry, or when he's like really in love,
Yeah.
every time he just hits a peak on emotion, it's just really, really funny. So then they fight, and he goes to prison, and then his dad has to bail him out.
Oh, sorry. No, actually, the fight is. I'm going to say, as excited as I was to watch him decorate the place beautifully, like the North Pole, it's equal parts like devastating to watch all of that be ripped to shreds as they're both fighting and rolling around, knocking over the perfectly formed gingerbread houses and all that sort of stuff.
Legos,
So
the Lego Empire State
oh,
Building.
trust me, I've built anyone that's built anything with Lego in this day and age. You know how long these things take, so that's painful to watch.
Then prison, dad bails him out, and I think that's when he takes him to the doctor to check if he is his son. And then Jon Favreau has his little cameo.
Yeah.
It's not groundbreaking. He's not one of the best characters, but totally solid and kind of funny. However, I really like it's not one of my favorite scenes, but it's a low key great scene. Is when he talks to a little girl in the waiting room, and they just talk about what do they talk about exactly?
They talk about like what they're there for, and then he says something like he says something that implies that he's an elf, or that he is a child of, you know, this is my mum and this is my dad, but she's like, oh, I'm a human child of humans, or something like that. It's like a really weird thing, a really weird conversation you wouldn't have normally.
But she's on, but they're exact. I think what's really cute about it is they're on the same level.
Yeah.
Like everyone so far has been looking at him like a total weirdo. Whereas this is the first person that talks to him like a peer, which shows that he obviously has the mentality and maturity of a child.
Yeah.
Which we won't dig it too far into that about him dating then a full-grown human woman. But I think it is really cute about he finally finds someone that he has something in common with, and that's nice to him.
Yeah. While he's eating his cotton wool balls.
That was improvised, apparently. He just started doing it. So then Walter brings him home to his family. Michael and Emily. They're a very cute New York family. She's like a lovely, caring, very supportive. She puts up with a lot.
Yeah, she
wife,
does.
and he's just sort of. I think initially he comes across as a little bratty Michael, but then you realize it's because his dad is a dick. But fair enough. And then we see how quickly he comes around to Buddy, so he grows on you.
Yeah. I think that's like, he's obviously going through quite formative years, Michael, and then I think it shows, there are parts that show Walter's like bad behavior rubbing off on him, like his whole, oh, I'm busy and I need to go eat in my room thing. But then like the more time that Michael spends with Buddy throughout the movie, you can see him like actually basically having a bit more emotional intelligence and being like a kinder person and stuff, which obviously shows that he is, I mean, most people are at that age quite influenced by who they spend their time with and stuff.
Yeah, and that, I think if anything, that now that we're talking about it, obviously the father-son Buddy Walter thing is the main emotional line, but I think actually the Buddy Michael one is kind of a close second, because if it was given as much time as the Walter Buddy thing, it definitely could have been the main focus of the movie, because it is very cute. And because it is Michael that kind of brings it all together at the end when Buddy's missing, and he comes and he gets his dad and is like, no, you're an asshole, and he kind of shakes his dad. That's the thing, actually. It's not Buddy that turns Walter into a nice guy, it's Michael.
Yeah.
We won't talk about the actor later, but I did a quick dig on him. He was like, he's in a few movies around then, just retired from acting a few years later, and now seems to just live a normal life.
Fair enough.
What a great pickup. I was like, yeah, I was the kid in Elf.
Yeah.
So they come over, they have dinner. The mother is like, oh, again, she could very well have been like, I mean, they weren't together back then, but she could have been like, you had a child this whole time, but she's super understanding. Well, you didn't know. We'll welcome him. He can, and she says you can stay as long as you want. If anything, Walter's one was like, no, we can't welcome him like that.
Yeah.
But so they have dinner. We see Buddy's eating habits.
Oh God, it's painful. Obviously, like you get why they're doing it, but yeah, him chugging back the 2-liter bottle of full fat Coke, and then trying to look around for like maple syrup to put on his spaghetti, and then just has some up his sleeve. Oh, it's like, so it's just so gross, because what would have looked like quite a delicious dinner suddenly turns into a nightmare.
This is where I wish I'd seen it as a 10-year-old, because I wonder if at that age you would have said this looks amazing, but no, I don't think so. In no world was it yummy.
No. I think the next day when he's made spaghetti with maple syrup on again as like a thank you to the mum, but then he's like putting M&Ms and all that other stuff, like chocolate sauce and stuff on it. As a child, I don't think I would have liked the idea of the spaghetti underneath it. But yeah, anything with like chocolate and Pop-Tart, yeah, like all the sweet stuff, it would have definitely appealed to me. But it's just so gross.
And even the way he eats the spaghetti, he doesn't just eat it, he just like crams it into his mouth.
Yeah.
Apparently, like one of the behind the scenes is that Will Ferrell did get sick sometimes from from that.
I'm not
Because he
surprised.
obviously spits it all out, but I'm sure I mean, just the idea of mixing M&Ms and syrup and spaghetti. Oof.
But that's actually the other part of where Emily is so loving and kind, because she's like, oh, this must be like on a much smaller scale what a lot of parents actually go through, where their child does something for them that they're like, I really wish you hadn't. But also, like, you've taken the initiative and this has come from the kindness of your heart, so I have to pretend to like it. Like when I first used to make my parents cups of tea when I was a child, I'm pretty certain they were horrible, but they would be like, thank you. That's so delicious. Like it's that sort of thing where you want to encourage that kind of like behavior, but no thank you to spaghetti and syrup.
I'm sure it's been done many times, but the scene that comes to mind with that is in Master of None. I think it might even be episode 1. He babysits these kids and he goes from like, oh, kids are amazing to kids are like really tiring. And at the end, the person who he's babysitting brings these like beautiful artisanal sandwiches from like a New York City shop and brings them for Aziz Ansari as a thank you. And she has one for him and one for her. But then the kids, they're like, oh, mommy, we missed you. And we made you this sandwich with probably like, bread and spaghetti and tuna and everything. And they said, and we have one for you and one for Dev. And then the mum, exactly like you, says, oh, thank you so much. And Aziz goes, nope, I'm going to have the really good sandwich. They're not my children. And you're like, yeah, I get that. So yeah, dinner, bedtime. The bedtime is really funny with that. Tuck me in.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'll talk about it more later in the characters, but apparently there was a lot of actual tension between Will Ferrell and James Caan because Will Ferrell was so ridiculous and just trying and improving, whereas James Caan's a very serious, stoic actor. And so when Will Ferrell would keep wanting to do, let's do it over, let's do this, and he'd be like, no, we got it. And so sometimes that he would get pissed off at him, and apparently one is the bedtime scene. He actually, he wasn't genuinely like angry at Will Ferrell, but he was pissed off, and so a lot of his exasperation, which is the word, is genuine.
Well, you know what? It does wonders for the reality of the scene. He's pissed off.
Yeah, obviously Buddy working is the most important part of the whole movie, but the fact that his dad hits his notes of being such a dick, being so exasperated, and at the end able to turn all of that is like key to the movie, because if he misses any of those, it doesn't work. If we don't hate him at the beginning, it doesn't work. If he's too nice to Buddy, it doesn't work. And if we don't believe the turn at the end, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Then Walter has his work crisis the next day. Kind of his story takes shape. So because of the stupid book, totally his fault that he left out the 2 pages. I actually love that the boss specifically says, no, you signed off on these. This wasn't a mistake. So you're shit at your job. He's like, you need to come up with a new book. So that's going to be an important plot point. Then Buddy and Michael become friends, picks him up at school. At first, Michael's like, oh, you're such a weirdo. But then the Central Park scene, which you love.
The snowball fight.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So basically, group of bullies that are following them that have been already
I think they're walking through and they sort of ambush them.
Right.
And they're like, oh no, we need to take
That's
cover.
one thing I couldn't remember, because I feel like Michael knows who they are, or like knows basically that they're like,
Yeah, I think they're from
the wrong side of the tracks or whatever. I don't know if they've actually been bullying him to that point necessarily, but yeah, but then they basically fall victim to some snowballs being thrown their way. And of course, no one was a match for Buddy, because he suddenly rolls up like whatever it is to hundreds of snowballs in the space of about 10 seconds and is just like lobbing them super speed. I would like to know how they maybe did that scene, but I will say however they did it visually, it's very satisfying to watch.
So Jon Favreau wanted to minimize special effects, which is why so much of the North Pole stuff is either real, like it's real sets, it's forced perspective with the small stuff, and then it's stop motion animation for like the snowman and stuff like that. But the one place they did use like traditional CGI was for the snowball.
Okay.
Both the fact that when he does the thing, they show him filming it. He's like, okay, so you basically need to turn your body as if you have your arm that's going quickly, but you don't move your arm, because they added the arm and all the snowballs in CGI fully. And then also, even when they get hit by, because at one point it's like they're going through a war zone, they're walking through and they're getting hit, and they show that they use proper serious special effects. Like they're like, oh yeah, so what we did here is we got this shot and we programmed in their silhouette and shot all the balls at them so that the balls exploded at the right time. It's like you're putting in the amount of effort like that they probably used in Saving Private Ryan for like the D-Day thing, but it's just for like a snowball fight. So they did actually put a lot of effort into that, and you know what, the result is great.
Yeah, the result is great. It's very good to watch. But I think, is that the main bit where Michael's suddenly really impressed with Buddy? It's like that quick a turning point.
Which again, often in these movies when it's that quick, it's not realistic. But I think if you're like a 12, 13-year-old boy, I wouldn't even call it being bullied because I feel like when you're that age, you basically just throw snowballs on, especially if it's someone you
Yeah,
know. It's like you throw snowballs on your friends from your enemies, whatever.
yeah,
But it is obviously a bonding moment for them.
mm,
And then I think they do go to Gimbals where they have another like some fun moments.
yeah,
But they're basically friends then. And he's a proper New York kid. He's got the
yeah.
accent, he's got the attitude, the hey, like leave me alone. But then as soon as like he lets his guard down, he's like, okay, he basically goes from one extreme to the other. Like, okay, I hate you, you're a weirdo. Now like you're my brother, like we're together. And he
Yeah.
obviously loves Buddy from then on.
Oh yeah, when he then they go to Gimbals and that's when Buddy asks Jovi out on a
Yes.
date, but Michael's there for that bit,
Yeah,
isn't
I think
he?
he encourages him to
Yeah,
do
he's
it.
like, do you want, ask her to go get food or
Yeah.
whatever. He's like, do you want to eat
Yeah.
food? She's like, hmm.
I
I just
guess.
had lunch, but sure. I do like that part actually because Michael. Then when she agrees on to go out with him on Thursday or whatever it is, then you can see like Buddy's getting really excited and he's about to like ruin it all, and Michael just goes, "Okay, he'll see you then," and
Yeah,
pulls him
yeah,
away.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, why is he like? When did you turn into a smooth operator at the age of 12 or whatever you
Yeah,
are?
listen, when you grow up in New York, you have to grow up quick.
Yeah, yeah.
So then the next day, Walter takes Buddy to work. And I really like it's a small bit. It's only like 15, 20 seconds. But just when they arrive, the Will Ferrell keeps trying to imitate James Caan. So because they walk in with very similar outfits. And
Mm,
he's like, and he just repeats what he says and walks the way he does. And it's just like very typical, young kid trying to be just like his dad. And I find
yeah.
that very cute. And he just has a little interaction with Will Ferrell. Well, Buddy does with Deb, where she obviously recognizes him, and she obviously really likes him. She's like, "Oh, I do recognize you."
Yeah, yeah, and then he tries to drink the coffee, which
Oh yeah, that's a really
clearly doesn't have 10 sugars or whatever he needs in it, and he's just like trying to brave it and get it down. And Walter's like, you don't have to finish
I'd
that.
actually forgotten about that, but that is again another. He's just so funny at doing it. Where you're like,
Yeah, because it is again, it's the same thing. Like if you gave black coffee to a child who'd never had anything like that before, that is basically what it's like. And he's obviously everything he has is so pumped full of sugar normally, but that is the right reaction.
So then he pisses him off, so he sends him to the mail room
Mm.
where he meets his best friend in the whole wide world.
What is his name?
I
Or
don't
do
think
we
he
know?
has a name. He's just
Okay,
everyone. No, he's just. I think on IMDb he's credited as mailroom guy.
okay.
So I think the basically the bit that was scripted was that he would be doing the suction thing and
Mm.
he would get the booze from. I think that was it. He was always going to get the booze off him, but then maybe he didn't even have a line, but I think he has one or two lines in that particular scene before they get drunk. And apparently Will Ferrell and the actor had really good chemistry, and
Mm.
so they just kind of started riffing. And then Jon Favreau just thought, okay, let's see where this goes. So he let them do their whole thing of just lying down drunk and talking about stuff.
Yeah.
So the reason that scene exists just because this guy was another improv comedian and they had the good comedy and they did like funny lines. But the thing that we find crazy is the fact that he mentions that he has something like 6 kids, but he's only like 20. So we thought it was 20. Apparently it's 26. 26 years old.
He says he's
He says he's
26.
26.
No.
So okay, not to be mean, but the first thing is this guy has the worst teeth in the world.
Yeah.
And there's actually I think it's because there's a shot from the top and you see his top teeth and they're just all over the place. But some people have bad teeth. This guy looks like he's in his 40s. Because he is. This guy was 45 at the time. So I was Googling this. It's like, why did this happen? And so apparently it's meant to be someone explaining the behind the scenes that the idea was that this mailroom was kind of the pit of hell where all the riffraff went. So, because it's true that everyone there looks like they're on. I mean, this guy's on work release. Everyone looks like they're on probation.
Yeah.
And the idea is that it ages you really quickly.
Right.
So the idea is that he was meant to be 45, but he was supposed to look 45, but he's actually 26 because that's what working in that mailroom does to you.
Right.
Which checks out. But yeah, the two of them are really funny. And then they end up dancing in front of everyone.
Yeah. 45 even is a bit of a stretch. I think he looks older than that.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Life. He's probably seen a lot.
Yeah.
And then so while that's going on, upstairs, Walter is dealing with his two idiot VPs or whatever, and because they need to come up with a new book, and they come up with the idea of let's call Miles Finch. I always because it's not one of the most important scenes or whatever, but sometimes you forget exactly how a scene is going to go when it's not important, and it's how they recommend that and how he goes, "You're my two vice presidents. You're my best guys, and your idea is to hire another writer." And you're like, "Oh yeah, that is stupid. I bet he's going to tell them off." And then he goes, "I love it," and you're like, "Oh no, you're an idiot as well." But I think that's probably also very much a commentary of by people like Jon Favreau about how ridiculous corporate execs are. And
Yeah. I think it's kind of unbelievable that he would work. That would be his job anyway. Like it's specifically what, like within children's
yeah, I
books.
mean,
So like you have to be,
he's the head of the division or whatever.
yeah.
And I guess he just the higher guy must be the general publishing company, but he's in
Mm,
charge of kids' books. Yeah, I don't think we should think too hard about how he ended up in that position.
no.
But I think it's true, especially back then. It's a very cynical view of corporate America. It's the idea that people who don't care about stuff end up in charge in it. And
Mm,
movie makers will probably often say that people who are in charge of studios don't actually care about film. So I'm sure you
yeah.
can definitely read something like that about the difference between creatives and execs.
Mm,
But yeah, so they say, let's get Miles Finch. Then Buddy and Jovi have their date where he recreates all of the New York City things that he loves, like the
yeah.
like the rotating doors.
The world's best cup of
Well,
coffee.
yeah, that's so funny.
And he's blindfolded her like it's some big reveal. And then he's like, okay, take a sip. And she's like, yep, that tastes like a shitty cup of coffee.
Because he's never
Like,
actually tried the coffee in there. He just is believing the advertising.
yeah.
And then they go skating. I think
Mm,
that's it. That's a really cute bit, which is, oh, you like big Christmas trees, do you? And then shows him
yeah.
the,
The Rockefeller one. That's,
yeah.
yeah.
And
The
then they have their
best.
kiss.
Yeah, that is really cute.
And I know she's in the finale,
Mm,
but that's basically it for them two.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, just,
Oh no, that's true actually, because they've gone for their date, and then basically when she comes about towards the end of the movie, she's actually sitting down at home to eat what looks like a very bland noodle dish, and then sees on the news that
yeah.
Michael's in Central Park. But I don't know what would have happened. Like if that hadn't have happened, I don't know if they would have like actually gone on another
Yeah,
date or
presumably they
whatever.
would have, but you don't
Yeah,
see any more. You just see them as like she's part of the whole ending bit, and then you
yeah,
just see that they ended up together and had kids.
yeah.
So that's basically it. There's no, usually if this was a rom com, they would have had a falling out, and he would have had to wing her back. But
That's
they
true.
don't bother
Yeah,
with that, which is good. You didn't need
yeah.
that.
It's not the main
Yeah.
point.
So this is basically like everything's fine for them.
Mm.
Then the Miles Finch meeting, which this movie is so packed with funny stuff, you can almost forget about that. This might be one of the best scenes in the movie.
I
Like,
think it
you think it
is.
is?
Yeah, I think it is.
Do you want to walk us through it?
Yeah. So, okay. So Miles Finch is played by Peter Dinklage, who is obviously a small person, and comes in, and he's supposed to be the writer that they've hired. And he's quite like he's obviously an arrogant, like high ego, but probably quite talented person, and has limited patience. So like he's already kind of like, I'm here, I'm the best. All of that sort of stuff. And then obviously Buddy comes in, and his immediate assumption is that Miles is an elf like him, and he's obviously not saying elf in a derogatory way like what most horrible people in real life would say. He's genuinely saying it, and this really strikes a nerve with Miles Finch, as you imagine it would. And he's like doing all this like, call me elf one more time, and he's like, oh, he's an angry elf. But it's like you could just see on both sides how like Buddy's basically pushing his buttons by accident, but like with each step of the meeting he's like getting more and more angry, and then he basically just like runs across the table and launches himself on Buddy, doesn't he? And actually kicks the shit out of him.
Which obviously Miles Finch is meant to be like an antagonist here,
Mm,
but I also think totally fair that he beat him up
yeah,
because you can't say that to someone.
no,
And again, that's where I think this could be the other one. That's like, oh, is it controversial? But I think if you actually analyze it, he wasn't coming from a bad place. He
no,
thought he thought he was an elf because he's a 6-year-old in his head.
yeah,
He didn't, as you say, he didn't mean it as an insult. Just,
no,
yeah, you're an elf, and then he gets his comeuppance from it.
yeah,
If, like, for example, I think if the Miles Finch character had been like a nice person and he like left crying, it's
mm,
like, okay, well, that's not good. But yeah,
yeah,
they even before this scene, they have him on a phone call before, and that's when he says, "You'll pick me up at this time with this
yeah,
temperature in this type of car."
yeah. He's a diva.
Yeah, he's a diva, and the way it was described in the script was that he's got a Gordon Gecko arrogance. Like he comes in. I also love when he defends himself. Like when he calls him elf the first time, he's like, "I get more ass than you in 1 year than you have in your
Yeah,
entire life.
yeah.
I've got houses in like definitely like small penis syndrome or
Yeah,
whatever."
overcompensating.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, it happened. So apparently, the character wasn't initially written as a small person, but then Peter Dinklage auditioned for it, and they were like, "Well, we have to use this," and so it kind of happened quite naturally. But it is just one of those things of like the crossroad between having obviously our Peter Dinklage. I think there's not much debate that he's the best. Like he's definitely the most famous, one of the best small person actors ever.
Yeah.
So having that going up in a funny scene against Will Ferrell, who's one of the best comedians
Mm.
ever, in a hilarious premise, it's just got. And apparently, it was really hard to film because, especially when he would call him like Angry Al, Peter Dinklage kept breaking.
Yeah.
And then apparently, the
Yeah.
fight scene again, it's just like all seems all funny, but it was actually quite hard to choreograph it, and
Right.
because of their size difference and stuff, and the fact that he has to beat the shit out of him even though he's probably a third of his height.
It's pretty good to watch.
Yeah. And apparently Peter Dinklage is like an incredible athlete, so that's how he made it work.
Right.
He'd he apparently said he was really happy to play the role. He has no regrets or anything, but he did say after this that he would never play like a magical. Uh, he used the word magical or fantastical small person again,
Mm.
and then some people did call him out on that in Game of Thrones. It was like, doesn't this technically count as being in a fantastic? And he was like, okay, well, I wish I'd never said that specifically. But I guess he never wanted to play like something like he never wanted to be considered an elf again.
Right. Yeah, but I guess he wasn't really in this, was
No,
he?
he
Like that's the
wasn't.
whole point.
But it's still the association. Like
Mm.
he didn't want to be typecast as this kind of comedy, like
Right.
small
Okay.
person thing that would, then become like Santa's sidekick in some shitty Netflix movie after.
Mm.
But yeah, and he's done fine in that. Obviously, after that, everything goes to shit. This becomes the low point of the movie where Walter is furious. He basically kicks Buddy out. Buddy says goodbye because he doesn't he write. Yeah, he writes a note in an etch a sketch. Does he?
Oh yeah, he does.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, which by the way, again,
mad etch a sketch
if
skills.
you've used one of those ever in your life and tried to draw like a basic house or something like that, they're very difficult. So watching him write this detailed note, goodbye note.
Well, he does everything. I think at one point when he wants to spend the day with his dad, he's like, "Oh, here's I've written a plan for
Oh
us," and he
yeah.
does it all there. And then the dad, and like again, super well calligraphied with like title and everything. And then when his dad says no, he goes, "Oh, okay," and just shakes it. And you're like, "Oh,
Oh, I love that bit where he's like, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Like,
yeah,
it's like he's just like, yeah, yeah, sure,
yeah."
of course. I didn't thought. It's just
Oh, my
one
heart,
quick
my
thought that I
heart.
had. Yeah.
So then he goes out on the bridge, and he has this is definitely the darkest point of the movie. Is that he kind of looks down, and at first you might think that it's suicidal,
Mm,
but it's a clear reference to It's a Wonderful Life,
yeah.
where I think weird parallel to the snowman thing. I don't think the point of it is meant to be directly Buddy's thinking of killing himself. I think it's
No.
meant to be Buddy is at his lowest, just like in It's a Wonderful Life. But in It's a Wonderful Life, he is explicitly thinking about killing himself because he thinks the
Yeah.
world will be better. So indirectly, this is Buddy thinking about killing himself.
Right. Even though that would be quite dramatic for this movie.
So because Miles Finch left his booklet behind, they basically use an idea for that for their pitch. They put it together. They're about to do it to the CEO.
Yeah.
Mike, because I think he left a note at the house. Michael finds the note, realizes Buddy's gone missing, interrupts the CEO, says, "Dad, you have to like come help me." He's like, "No, no, leave me alone." Then the CEO says, "Kid, leave us alone." And then again, it's such a well acted line when he says, "Don't speak to my son like that."
Yeah.
And that's like his turning point where he's like, the guy like says something, he goes, "Oh, screw you, we're gonna find him." I mean, I have a little point to make here.
Okay.
Controversial view. I kind of feel bad for the CEO because he's flown in on Christmas Eve. Granted, the original sin is he should never have made the meeting on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Walter should never have agreed to it. But you know what? People, especially high executives, like sometimes you work on Christmas Eve, especially if it's a meeting or whatever.
Mm.
The idea that him and those 3 or 4 other people around him have all come into the office for a meeting, and then Walter's like, "Yeah, we'll do this in a few days."
Yeah.
Like, imagine if you were on a Zoom call with 4 people, and then the other person's like, "Sorry, something important's come up." You'd be like, "No," especially as it feels like, "No, just spend 15 minutes giving me this pitch, and then you can
Yeah.
go look for your crazy son or whatever."
That's the thing that obviously it has to happen for the movie or whatever, but you do think like surely that pitch is actually going to be fairly quick, and maybe at most it's 30 minutes with like a couple of questions or whatever, or like the questions can wait but the pitch can happen. But he's still going to be in the same situation 15 minutes. Like there's not really that much urgency.
I
But
mean, I guess the idea is that Buddy is like it's like if you lost your 6-year-old in New York City, every minute that
Mm,
goes by would be.
I guess so.
But
Yeah.
it's all Walter's fault. It's
Yeah.
kind of like he's now lashing out at the boss as if he's the one that's created this whole situation. It's like,
Yeah.
no, you screwed up the pigeon in the puppy book.
Yeah.
You then agreed to have this meeting. You haven't got your pitch ready. Like it's all the kind of the ramifications of his decisions.
Yeah, that's true.
And just the boss just happens to be the kind of external source.
Mhm.
So again, as you say, I actually like for me, this movie's a 4.5 out of 5. I think it's really good, but I do think it's details like that that just keep it away from being like a 5 out of
Mm.
5. But it doesn't ruin it for me. But just
Yeah.
Just something worth mentioning.
Yeah.
So then they go out looking for him, and they kind of all just bump into each other in Central Park. This is the climax of the movie, but I'm happy to just kind of rattle through what
Mm.
happens. It's Santa's there. He's lost his engine, which only Buddy can fix. It's actually weirdly complicated. There's the sleigh, which works on Christmas spirit, but then there's the engine which they have because they're not getting enough Christmas spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Buddy fixes the engine, which doesn't need Christmas spirit. They get a little bit of Christmas spirit to get them off the ground. Use the rocket, but then the rocket gets knocked off, so they need the Christmas spirit to fly off. I
Oh,
think it's actually unnecessary. I don't understand why they even needed the engine. They could have just had, we need Christmas spirit, get
for
more
the
Christmas
sleigh to
spirit,
fly.
fly,
Yeah.
and they create. So we were saying this last when we watched it. You've got the Central Park Rangers that are
Mm.
this new artificial villain who are kind of chasing them. We realize watching it, you do need to have them to kind of create the stress that they need to fly, they need to get off because otherwise they have all night to do it. But anyway, Central Park Rangers chase them. Michael creates Christmas cheer.
Mm.
There's that the funny. I think the funniest bit in all this is how there's the newscaster and he gets on there and he starts reading the naughty or nice. He starts reading the naughty and nice list
Yeah.
and all these kids and stuff. And then the funniest is when he says about the reporter, Charlotte would like a Tiffany's ring from her man and would like him to make up his mind. And she's just like, shut the hell up.
Yeah. 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 So specific.
So they fix the sleigh. Santa Claus is coming to town. Everyone sings that, saves Christmas, and that's basically like the end ish. Then there's the epilogue, which basically is the family dinner.
Mm.
Everyone's happy, and then it's like fast forward 1 year. You see Buddy and Jovi who've gone to North Pole with baby Susie, who, as
Yeah.
we said now, named after Buddy's mum, and basically just it's a very typical everyone lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
And that's the movie.
Cute.
Yeah. What would you say some of the main themes are in Elf?
There's a big family. Well, like family, love, hope, or like not maybe not hope, but what's the like community? Something about like people coming together.
Yeah. Yeah, I have family, obviously literally, like finding your father, your
Mm.
brother, everything. Then belonging, I think generally is like he doesn't
Yeah.
belong when he's an elf, but then he comes to the real world and he doesn't belong here, he doesn't fit in,
Mm.
and he kind of ends up finding an in between where he's he belongs in the human world, he understands his place, but he's still a little bit of a weirdo,
Yeah.
and but he still has like a home, like his adoptive father back in the North Pole, and gets on there. And then yeah, Christmas spirit in general, which I think ties into the community bit and just
Mm.
everyone believing in it. Apparently, Roger Ebert in his review, he really liked it, but he said he doesn't couldn't tell if the movie couldn't decide whether or not it was important for people to believe in Santa or not. And I
Right.
think clearly it's making out like it is important that you need to have the Christmas spirit for
Yeah.
Santa to exist because that's literally Santa does exist only because people believe in him.
Yeah. And isn't that one of the things that Buddy says earlier in the film? Like when people were questioning the Christmas spirit, maybe it was Papa Elf that says like, "Oh, people don't believe in Santa," and he's like, "But what? Where do they think they get their presents?" And he's like, "Well, they're saying the parents are doing it." And he's like, basically like that's crazy.
Yeah,
And
that's actually
that's one of those moments when you watch it and you're like, "Oh, that's
yeah.
actually like." Obviously, we're watching it as ourselves, but then I think like sometimes with Christmas movies, I'm like, "Oh, could you watch this with your child and not be worried that like there's any sort of like oh Santa's not real?" But that's like a really good way of
Yeah, and I think
like
stuff like that
yeah
is very much what goes into the Christmas spirit theme. And
yeah
that is actually a really funny theme where he's like, "Why? That's so stupid. Why would
yeah
anyone believe
yeah
that?"
yeah.
So now we're going to talk about the characters, starting, of course, with Will Ferrell as Buddy. What's your general thoughts on him in this role?
I think he's pretty perfect for it. He's very expressive, very funny. Actually think the fact that he's so tall and lanky adds like a dimension to it as well. I don't know if it was I'm trying to think if that was the first thing I saw him in. It must have been, but I just feel like he was kind of made for this role. Like it just suits him a lot.
I agree. I think so. Then here's a story about how he ended up in it. The script, as I mentioned, was initially finished in 1993, so 10 years before, and it was initially optioned by a company called the Motion Picture Corporation of America, which you think, well, that probably doesn't exist anymore. It actually still does, but they specialized in low budget films. They made a bunch of films like direct to TV films back when we were kids, and now they make a lot of Netflix movies that you'll have heard of, like the
Oh,
like the Christmas Switch and stuff
the
like that,
Princess Switch.
Princess Switch,
Yeah.
stuff like that. A couple, and the Irish Wish they made as well.
Oh,
So I mean, to be fair, those don't have the smallest budgets, but they very much make low budget, lower caliber movie. And so they optioned the script, which means that they basically paid the writer a certain amount to say that we have the option to make this movie for a year. And if they then make it, then they'll pay him more money. That's how scripts
right.
work. So they wanted Chris Farley to play him. So he was another SNL alum. Unfortunately, he died in 1997. So that just shows that this was many years before the movie was actually made. But basically, he's this big, he's a very funny guy, but is very different, much more of a Jack Black type than a Will
Uh,
Ferrell type. But basically, the writer was having none of it, and he basically let the option run out. He just managed to delay it enough that then the year ran out and then they all moved on, because
mm,
making a movie is very hard. So if the writer's not on board, then you're like, never mind. And then it was years of this writer then with the script trying to find someone who would make it, because once you have a script, you need to find producers. Once you find producers, they need to find stars, they need to find directors. It's a very arduous um, journey. And
mm,
this was actually a really interesting case of someone having to go through all the steps. But basically, he found a couple of producers who got on board. They were all very inexperienced, but one of them happened to play basketball with one of not even Will Ferrell's agent, but basically Will Ferrell was big enough at the time. They didn't just have an agent, but he had a team of agents, and this person was like a junior agent. So this producer who knew the author played basketball with someone who was on Will Ferrell's representation team. They all these three or four people passed it along. Then it got to Will Ferrell's agent. So again, it took like a junior agent, a senior agent, his number one person, and then it finally made its way to Will Ferrell. But everyone along the line was like, "This is great. This is exactly the sort of movie that we want Will Ferrell to do to kind of
mm.
cement himself as a comedic icon." And so they got him on board and sorted. But then they needed a director and stuff, and I'll talk about that more in the production. But at this point, so they filmed this in end of 2002, beginning 2003, and it came out into 2003. He'd finished SNL in 2002, so he's right off there. He's very famous for SNL,
Yeah.
but he hasn't been in any big movies. The only role that you probably know him from before this was he was Mugatu in Zoolander, which is not a small role,
Oh,
but
yes.
it's very much just a side, ridiculous, over the top role. And I genuinely think a lot of people, like if I was in their position, I would have thought that Will Ferrell is not someone who can carry a movie all by himself. I
Mm.
think it'd be completely fair to say, yeah, he's this over the top buffoon who can play one niche role really well.
Wait, when did Zoolander come out?
A couple of years before this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was surprised by that timeline as well.
So I think I would have, that probably was the first thing I
Right.
saw him in. Yeah,
You
that
think
would
you
make
saw
sense.
Zoolander when as it came out?
Yeah, I did.
He also had I don't even know what the role is, but he had small roles in Austin Powers 1 and 2, Will Ferrell. So
Mm,
he'd been in movies, everyone knew him, but it was just this idea of him being the center of a movie that was quite controversial. But then he basically got Elf was being made around the same time Old School was being made. Old School was filmed a little bit before, and it came out a few months before. But this kind of changed everything, because they went from not believing that Will Ferrell could carry a movie to being like, "Whoa, have you seen Old School?"
once, but
Yeah,
yeah, not. I don't
but
remember.
Old School is very different from. It's almost the opposite. He's just like this drunk buffoon who like runs around naked and wants to be devoid of any
Mm,
responsibility. And apparently they tried to take the movie away from Jon Favreau and re-edit it to make it more of a raunchy R-rated comedy,
okay.
but it failed miserably because the movie was filmed to be the movie that we saw it was. It was nearly impossible to re-edit it that way. But anyway, all that's to say that Will Ferrell's involvement was like very much had its ups and downs.
Mm,
From we don't want you to be in it to we now want you to be in it. We want to change it into some different kind of movie after we filmed it. But this Elf and Old School 2003 was what put him on the map. At this point, he's like an A-list comedy star.
yeah.
But his career is weird because it's not as though then it was just hit, 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 hit. I literally started writing my notes and was like, and after that, he was on fire. And his next movies are The Producers, Bewitched, Kicking and
I
Screaming.
don't know any of these.
Exactly. They weren't like absolute bombs, but nothing that's memorable either
Mm,
critically or commercially. The next big movie that he had was Talladega Nights. Have you seen
yeah,
that?
yeah. Again, once I think,
So
but
I saw that once years ago, and I don't think at the time I was like, I think Will Ferrell is someone you have to get Will Ferrell. You have to
yeah,
understand his humor, like Step Brothers, which is
yeah.
one of the greatest comedies of all time. But you need to almost be familiar with Will Ferrell and his humor to find that as amazing as it is.
Mm,
And I rewatched Talladega Nights a few years ago. I was like, this is absolute gold. But yeah, so he had Talladega Nights, he had Blades of Glory, Step Brothers, the other guys, Anchorman,
Yeah.
obviously in that, and Anchorman 2. But then Anchorman 2 is in the early 2010s. And then honestly, apart from, I really like the Eurovision movie.
Oh yeah.
What did you think of that one?
Not so much. But also, I'd only watched it once, and with some of the other ones of his that I've seen just once, I think there's a what you just said there about you need to kind of like buy into him and his style of comedy and kind of like it as well. I think it's I kind of feel like that about a lot of his films that are actually massive hits, like Anchorman. Even the first time I watched it, I think I was like, like yeah, it's fine. But then like the more times I've watched it, the same with Step Brothers, although I think I liked that more the first time I watched it. It just grows every
Yeah.
time, and almost like in anticipation of like your favorite lines or your favorite scenes, you're already sort of laughing. Where I don't think, because I've not rewatched like Talladega Nights or Old School or
But
Eurovision, maybe they would
they
have
all fall into that
like
category.
they might have grown on me as well. I just didn't carry on trying to rewatch them basically.
But yeah, I feel he's had a great career,
Mm-hmm.
but there has been a lot of misses in them, which is quite surprising.
Yeah, even if he's had a lot of misses, though, I feel like some of his biggest movies are like what some people would consider to be like the best
Oh,
comedies. So, like, you
100%.
can afford to have a bunch of misses in the in the interim years if you're coming out with some of those
And
films.
most people in any genre, whether you're a dramatic actor, comedic action, very few people have even forget a career, but even a period. Tom Hanks has a crazy period of like 10 years where he didn't have a single miss. But apart from crazy people like him,
Yeah.
everyone has hits and misses. I think you alluded to the fact this felt like this couldn't have been anyone else in this role. Do you agree or
Well, yeah, I guess just because I'm thinking of who was around at that time, and I feel like he maybe it's just that thing where you've seen him in that character, and I've just never really thought of anybody else in that role.
So I think he has a very unique talent, which lends itself perfectly to this role. It's that he commits 100% to a character in a comedic way. You know, you can argue that Daniel Day Lewis does that in a dramatic role, but I think he's a Daniel Day Lewis of comedy. But and it doesn't, and almost the more ridiculous it gets, and so I had this thesis, and then I googled it, and people like Adam McKay who have worked with him or Jon Favreau, they say this about him that the more ridiculous the character and the situation gets, the more serious he gets about it.
Right.
And it's the fact that he doesn't wink. There's never a like, oh, I'm an elf wink. And I'm not saying, and the thing is, the wink isn't a bad thing. Like some of the greatest, so I looked this up, some of the greatest comedic people who kind of do this quote unquote wink, people like Jim Carrey. Like Jim Carrey is very funny, but you never, when he's being Ace Ventura or whatever, he's in on the joke. He's like, this is crazy, and I'm gonna do this as crazy as possible, but it's tongue in cheek. There's nothing tongue in cheek about what Will Ferrell does. Other comedians, people like Bill Murray, Bill Murray is always like, this is kind of ridiculous, but I'm going to
Yeah.
go along. Vince Vaughn, Jon Favreau's best bud, he's like, who's in Old School with him. He's hilarious, but he's always so hilarious, but like so ridiculous. And
Mm.
him in like swingers and stuff, it's obvious that he's in on the joke. And then the ultimate person that came up in my research is Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds is very funny, but his literal shtick is to
Wall.
break the fourth wall in
Yeah.
Deadpool and be like, "Isn't this funny?" Like, ha ha ha.
Yeah.
And Will Ferrell is just the complete opposite of he is like when he and the lines we said, like when he says you sit on a throne of lies, like he genuinely looks like in that moment he hates this person and wants
Yeah.
them to die. Or when he's sad, he's like so crestfallen. And I just think you need that for this particular
Yeah,
role.
that's true.
Then James Caan as Walter, kind of complete opposite, but in the best way possible.
Mm.
Any thoughts on him beyond what we said?
No, I think he's just kind of the perfect, not, I don't want to say perfect villain, but like perfect exactly in the way that he's supposed to play
Yeah,
this
anti
role.
anti
Like,
person.
yeah,
Do you know? So do you know what he's famous for?
no.
So he played Sonny Corleone in The Godfather. So
What?
Michael's brother.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen that multiple times and I
Yeah, I
did not
mean,
make that.
he was probably like 30 or 40 years before, and he's a young man in there.
Still, though,
But
wow, quite different.
so very like tough character,
Yeah.
and he did a lot of tough things. So he just seemed like this really good person to have as the anti Will Ferrell. But as I said, the result is that apparently he came on set And he says, so his name's James Caan, but he said, I want everyone to know me as Jimmy the Dream because that's what I'm going to be on set. And people say that he was generally very pleasant and nice, but there were times when Will Ferrell was going over and over with the improv that he did start to get quite exasperated. But I mean, the result is just some great tension between them.
Yeah.
Apparently, there was one scene after Miles Finch has left, and he's so angry, and he basically tells Buddy to f off. He wasn't giving it enough anger, and apparently Jon Favreau whispered something in his ear, and then he gave like this great performance where he's absolutely angry. And later on, people asked Jon Favreau, "What did you say to him?" And he said, "I told him, remember, you're Sony fucking Corleone." And he was like, "Okay." And he, like that's the sort of anger that he brought to it. Then we have your girl Zooey Deschanel. So for context, one of Sina's favorite shows is New Girl. So how do you feel about her being in this?
I love New Girl. I will say that she's probably my. She used to be my least favorite part of it, but you know, the more I've rewatched it, she's grown on me. I don't think it needed to be her in this role in this film necessarily, but I also think she does a great job in it. I think there are a lot of other people I can also see doing a great job, but I think it's because she's not really asked to do too much with it, so it's like it doesn't have to be specific to her.
Yeah, she wasn't as quirky in this as she is later, but apparently she claims that her later quirkiness comes from working with Will Ferrell in this and kind of
Oh,
seeing,
really?
because she said she was quite shy. She
Mm.
was already a working actress, not big time or anything. She was pretty much unknown in this, but she'd been in a bunch of stuff, so she was a working actress, obviously a comedian,
Mm.
but seeing Will Ferrell go absolutely crazy in a starring role, it kind of inspired her to be a bit more weird. Because obviously in New Girl, she is very weird and quirky.
Yeah, yeah.
But it wasn't 500 Days of Summer wasn't until 6 years after this, and New Girl wasn't until 8 years later.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think this is very much. Unfortunately, this happens a lot more for women than men. That it seems like we had other movies that we've done where a woman is in a really good role, and it's not until a few years later that then when they kind of done two or three really good roles, they're finally given the recognition.
Mm.
Unlike men, it's like, oh, you're in one good thing now. We're gonna try and make you into a
Yeah, but I
superstar.
think that's the challenge with this one. Like, it's a really good movie that she's in, but I don't think, like, as a casting agent or whatever, I wouldn't see her in this and be like, oh my God, I must have her in this, like, specific role that I'm trying to fill. Like, obviously, I know now, like, what she can do and stuff, but I think just from that performance alone, it wasn't bad by any means. It just wasn't unique, I guess.
Yeah, agreed. Then Papa Elf, very cute. Nothing much more needs to be said about him.
No, just very cute.
But then Miles Finch, Peter Dinklage, that is just one of the strokes of genius in casting in this.
Yeah. That's one of those things where it could have quite easily been such a different scene, such a different like feel to the whole thing. Like it's a lot more daring, I think, that it goes there, that he allows it to go there. But I think that is one of my favorite scenes. So I'm glad that it's him.
Yeah, and we've already talked about all the stuff about him behind the scenes. But
Yeah.
he was 34 when this came out, so he wasn't a young. He was still young, but he wasn't at the beginning of his career. He had his breakthrough in the movie called The Station Agent, which I have the DVD. We haven't watched it yet, but that's his breakthrough.
Yeah.
And it was shortly after that. So obviously he was. I think he was a critic's sweetheart because of that. But the idea that then he was like put in a very commercial movie and that he
Mm,
became known for that. Obviously, then Game of Thrones sent him into the stratosphere as an absolute A-lister, which was a
yeah.
long time after that. But yeah, I mean, he's a great actor. And then honestly, we could go on for an hour. I've listed you can easily so that's like five characters we just mentioned. There's easily 15 great characters in this. I'm just gonna rattle some off. Some of them already talked about. So we've talked about Michael, we've talked about Emily, then you got Santa, then you got Gimbel's manager, then you got Deb the assistant,
Mm.
Eugene and Morris, the Walter's left and right hand men. So they're not random people. So one of them is Kyle Gass, who's the other half of Tenacious D with Jack Black.
Ah, I should have known that.
And do you know who the other one is?
No.
Andy Richter, who's Conan O'Brien's sidekick. Like he's been in a bunch of stuff, but he's in that. So those are two very recognizable people, even though
Yeah.
they've probably only got 3 or 4 lines each. Then there's Charlotte, the journalist, the mailroom guy that we've talked about, the doctor as Jon Favreau.
Mm.
Then there's even the elves. It's I was saying this last night. I think these movies, obviously, you got a great star, great supporting cast, but just having, especially in a comedy, a dozen people who have a couple of lines that are really funny that you can be like, oh, this is the scene with the mailroom guy or whatever. It's just
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So who's your favorite character?
I don't think I really thought about that before, actually. I'm not sure if I could pin it down. Feels a bit too on the nose to say Buddy,
I
but
mean,
like,
I
I
think I'd
think
say
it is.
Buddy, which is I think it's interesting because sometimes the main character isn't people's favorite, but I think he's got it
Yeah, I
easily.
guess if it was like he was just a person in real life that you were around,
That'd be
it would
very
be the
annoying.
worst, most annoying thing ever. But for the purpose of this movie, I think he's the best one.
Agreed. Moving on to the script. So I said a few things about how it went from David Berenbaum's mind to the big screen, about how he needed it initially got optioned. Then he found the producers John Berg, Todd Komarnicki, and Cale Boiter. They were the ones who got Will Ferrell on board. Then they got Jon Favreau on board. It does seem like it was rewritten quite a few times, probably during the development phase. And then when Jon Favreau came on board, he did rewrite a bunch of stuff. As I said, the script was inspired by Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The apparently David Berenbaum, I think he was a West Coast kid who was living in Philadelphia, and he would get really sad during Christmas, so he would watch all of these old Christmas movies. And because of the loss of his father and loving Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, all those things came together and resulted in him writing Elf. Should we just go take turns on our favorite lines, and we can say
Yeah.
if we have one that the other did?
My first favorite line is actually from the Etch a Sketch scene
Okay.
when Buddy is disappointed with himself and he just says, "I'm just a cottonhead in Ninny Muggins."
Yeah, I have that one too.
Yeah, as if that's like, yeah, it doesn't need any explanation. It's just a great one.
Yeah, I have that one too. And then the other one in the same vein, even though it's later, is when I think he hurts himself and he goes, "Son of a nutcracker."
Yeah,
He
that's
doesn't have
what's
a
written on your
yeah, it
jumper.
is. He doesn't have a million of those, but I think those two are just very, very cute.
Yeah,
Then, as I said, the reason I got into this movie was because of the "Bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad." So I just think that's just a cute one.
yeah. The "You did it! Congratulations! World's best cup of coffee."
Great job, everybody.
Yeah,
That's a great
yeah.
one. And then obviously the "You sit on a throne of lies."
Yeah, that's a good one. I also like when they say in Gimbals that Santa's coming the next day. Oh no, is it then?
Yeah.
Where he goes, Santa, I know him, or is that another point?
No, I think it's then.
Oh yeah,
And so I have that as well. I was like, Santa, oh my god, and that's where he like loses his shit, and that's the one that's like it's a meme now. Like, oh
yeah.
my god.
No, but it's specifically I know him that
Oh,
that I
right.
like because it's like just so specific.
No, I think maybe that is when he arrives, because there's the moment when Santa's there, but he hasn't realized that it's not Santa yet. I think he says it there.
Oh
He's like, Santa, I know him.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's I like that one specifically.
Then you mentioned it in the favorite scene. So "It's okay, buddy. How many etch a sketches have you made?" "I made 85, and then 85. That puts you 915 off pace."
Yeah. And then I've just got his like I don't think it counts as a quote, but his really terrible singing song to his dad.
"I
Like,
love you."
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm here and I'm singing. It's like no, oh no, you're not.
Then we always try to stick to our four main food groups: candy, candy canes, candy corns, and syrup.
Yeah, gross. I think those are all my faves.
Then "It smells like mushrooms and everyone looks like they want to hurt me" when he goes into the
Oh yeah,
mailroom. I think everything Miles Finch says, the entire scene could just be one giant quote.
yeah,
But "I get more action in a week than you've had in your entire life. I've got houses in LA, Paris, and Vale." And then I also love, I can't even tell you why. I think it's just the delivery, but it's when he says, "I've got this one idea that I'm especially psyched out of my mind about." He just has this
yeah.
way he says it, like he's so going for it. "I'm psyched out of my mind." And then the "Call me elf one more time."
Yeah.
He's an angry elf.
Basically, everything he says is just like perfect.
And yeah, so it didn't. So I checked all of these, and there was no evidence that any of these were improvised. So I think most of the good lines were actually written,
Mm.
like probably by Jon Favreau in the rewrites, if I'm honest. And then it's probably more of the physical comedy that was improv. Moving into the production, and we're going to start off with the brands, which is brought to us by our friends at Concave Brand Tracking. If you have any interest in analyzing brands' value in entertainment, contact Concave Brand Tracking. So, did you notice any brands in Elf?
It's not actual Coca-Cola that he drinks from, is it, at the table? Or it
is,
is. Okay, yeah, well then that one. No, not many others.
For context, when I started Concave, went back. So I started in 2013, and I looked at the top 10 movies at the US box office for the previous 10 years. So Elf was one of the first movies I did because it came out in 2003. So just in that
Oh,
area.
okay.
So we have all the data on every single brand. There were 51 brands. They got a total of $8.8 million in value back then. But because this movie is now a cult classic, we estimate that there's over $250 million in value for all of those brands because people are watching it. And the number one brand is Nike
Oh,
because of all of
really?
Michael's clothing. He wears like a Nike hat, he wears Nike jerseys and jackets and stuff like that. Then Gimbals was the second biggest brand.
Right.
Even though it technically doesn't exist anymore, it's still a real life brand, so we counted it. Apparently, yeah, it was quite interesting how they decided, as I said, to use a real life brand even though it didn't exist anymore. So it
Mm.
had that authenticity, but without having to deal with the legal issues. Because yeah, there's a lot of things that Macy's wouldn't have liked. The drinking on the job,
Yeah.
the fighting with Santa. Also, they would have had to work a lot to make it actually look like a Macy's, whereas here they could be free to make it look like whatever they
Mm.
wanted. Then Etch a Sketch, big brand in it. Hershey's, Rockaware was also worn by Michael for the Jets NFL team. Kellogg's, the NFL, Coca Cola, and then Sony is all the televisions when they're like doing all the journalist stuff.
Ah.
And then those are the top 10. And then some notable ones was Mr. Potato Head and Monopoly in the North Pole when they're making presents. Those are some of their.
Oh, I
They
didn't
make a
know
lot of the
that.
same presents. They make lots of Etch a Sketches, lots of Monopoly sets, lots of Jack in the Boxes, lots of Lego because he builds Lego.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Lego's a good one.
Then Tiffany for the quote with Charlotte.
Mm.
Then the car the Miles Finch says that he needs to pick up one has to be a Lincoln. And also a really random one, but I noticed it again this time. One of the times that Walter's in his office, he has a Cadillac pamphlet on his desk. Like
Oh,
it's just there for no particular reason, but quite visible to me at least.
yeah.
But yeah, so those are the brands. Then we talked about Jon Favreau, so who was the director and then he was the doctor. So he'd only made one other movie as a director, and it was called Made in 2001,
Oh,
which he wrote, directed, and produced. I haven't actually seen it, but it's also with Vince Vaughn. It seems like it got decent. It's not going to be as good as Swingers, but I think it's probably worth watching. And so this movie is just 7 years after Swingers, and apparently it was Vince Vaughn was shooting Old School with Will Ferrell, so 6 to 9 months before this was made.
mm.
And it seems like that might have been part to how he made basically because Will Ferrell was on board for Elf, but they still needed a director, and it seems like Vince Vaughn might have mentioned it to Will Ferrell, who then mentioned the producers. That's how Jon Favreau ended up in the mix. There's a good if someone wants to know even more about this movie than what you're getting today, there's a really good episode of the movies that made us on Netflix where there's like 45 minutes just about Elf. So I watched that, and in that they go into depth about how Jon Favreau got involved. And apparently when he pitched it, he had three principles. The first is that he wanted to make it look like Rankin Bass. And apparently he didn't know that that was what the writer did want, but the writer was like, "That's exactly what I had in mind," so that he loved that.
Mm-hmm.
Then he said that he wanted to make it a true Christmas movie, so family themes, Christmas spirit, not as we said, just one of those movies just tangentially about
Yeah.
Christmas. And then the third one, which nailed it, he wanted it to be a timeless classic, so not just Christmas movie that year, but
Mm.
timeless. And I think it really succeeds at that
Yeah.
because the and that's one of the reasons he wanted to use minimal CGI. So
Mm.
even in like the sled and stuff, and he didn't want to use it for all of the North Pole stuff. And I think it's true. That's where it would have started looking really shit now if all of that was done with CGI of the time,
Yeah.
like it was just an animated snowman. Also, I was thinking little things that they don't use computers much. They don't use phones. So even though you can tell from The Office that it's old, it doesn't feel dated because you don't see people like making phone calls on giant phones and stuff like that.
That's true. How do they do like the Santa sleigh flying and stuff? Like how is that all done?
So when you're actually seeing them in it, they basically film Will Ferrell and Santa on in front of a blue screen,
Mm.
and they do all of that. And then when you actually see it kind of from a distance, that's actual CGI.
Okay.
But that's a good point about visual effects because one of the big things is about making Buddy look so big. So they use
Yeah.
what's called forced perspective on this. We talked about it with Frosty on the Lord of
Lord
the
of the
Rings
Rings.
episode.
Yeah.
But I think I said in that episode, I think the problem with Lord of the Rings is they used a lot of different methods.
Mm.
Sometimes they use forced perspective. Sometimes they used smaller people. Sometimes they literally would just film them separately and then reduce them. And as a result, the proportions aren't always right. Whereas I feel like here they pretty systematically use the forced perspective, so the proportions are always quite consistent.
Yeah.
So I think they do a better job here with the forced perspective. But yeah, it's crazy how they do it. Like they show these shots that just you see the flat shot. And you're like, of course, that's Will Ferrell in a classroom. But then you see the forced perspective, and he's actually like, the kids are sat here, and he's sat all the way over there. But it just makes him look like giant.
Oh wow. I feel like I need to knowing that I feel like it would be quite good to for me to rewatch that bit and just see
Yeah, I'll show it to
like
you, and then for anyone watching the video of this, I'll be putting little clips of it to
mm,
show you. But another perfect example is when the young buddy is on the bike on the tricycle with the dad. The
yeah.
way they've done that is they have a kid up front with a camera in his face. Then they have another kid who's doing the legs that are supposed to be Papa Elf, but then Papa Elf is actually maybe a meter or two behind him, and you see his head over it, and he just looks really small in comparison.
Right.
Lots of little tricks like that. It's quite cool, yeah, as you say. It's quite cool to see the behind the scenes and
Yeah.
then see it again and
Yeah.
see that's how they did it.
That's impressive.
Another thing that's impressive is the amount of energy that went into making these sets for the North Pole. Because you don't really think about how they made them, but everything was made by hand. So, and again, I think that helps making it look timeless because these are actual brick and mortar, well, in this case, wooden polystyrene sets. Apparently, the normal sound stages weren't big enough, and so at one point they got like a full ice rink to film it in. Another really funny one is for some reason they ended up filming huge portions of this in an abandoned asylum. They
Really?
ended up, for some reason, this was a great building to do it. They filmed stuff like the prison scene, which was the one which made the most sense when he was in prison about to get bailed out.
Yeah.
I think all the office scenes and all of the scenes in the flat, those were all built inside this, I guess it was basically a warehouse by this point, but it used to be a mental institution that was probably closed in the 70s or 80s. Then the special effects I mentioned, the stop motion, they hired this company called the Kyoto Brothers. They were these guys who just specialized in visual effects, mostly horror movies, but they were brought in to do all the stop motion for all the Rankin Bass character like the snowman and stuff, or the Narwhal. Funnily enough, they also worked extensively on Team America World Police, which we're going to be doing with Ian on the podcast shortly. So
Oh.
these things really tie together. Here's a little trivia for you. Do you know who? Do you want to guess who did the voice of the narwhal?
Oh. Okay. Have they modified the voice quite a lot then?
I mean, yes and no, considering that me and this person who I talked about were able to do an impression of it.
Mm,
It doesn't sound like that person, but it is someone that's very.
could
It's
be Vince Vaughn.
good guess. It's not. It was Jon Favreau.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's quite good.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And yeah, so the filming, as I said, they basically roughly was three. There was 3/3. They filmed the stuff on the North Pole on these sets, these giant sets. About a third of the movie was filmed there. Then they did a lot of guerrilla stuff. 13 days just filming it out in New York, and then the rest was done in these sound stages in the abandoned asylum. I think they said about 55 days of shooting. It's always crazy how quickly they do that when you consider it. Because you think of a movie taking about a year to be made, but a lot of that is pre-production and post-production. But they often spend only a couple of weeks or a couple of months.
Filming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another one thing, it's not a critique, but something that we talk about a lot in the production, which I think is very much fine but not amazing here, is the music. There's a couple of tunes to stick in your head, but it's not something you remember it for.
I was gonna say I can't think of anything apart from when they're singing,
Yeah.
like in Central Park.
Yeah, that's not really the score. There's this one particular tune that I can think of that I can play in the background. But other than that, it's not a problem. It's not bad. But yeah, I think it's unremarkable. So that's probably something that, if you had John Williams
I was gonna say, yeah,
do it, he would
know.
have come up with something, an absolute banger.
Yeah.
And I looked at the guy, his name is John Debney. He's done stuff like Sin City, Bruce Almighty, Spider-Man 2, 3, The Jungle Book. He's worked a lot with Jon Favreau. Ice Age, Hocus Pocus 2. All perfectly good movies. None of them remembered for their music.
Yeah, that's true.
And then the last one I'd say is the costumes. I think they're again, they're not the thing that sticks out, but the elf costume is iconic.
Yeah.
And the way everyone dresses just works really well. This brings us to our recap. How do you rank this movie in terms of all time, top Christmas movies, favorite movies? How do you position it for you?
All time is a tricky one because I kind of I enjoy it a lot and would think that it would be in my top 100, but because I've never made my top 100, as you know, I think there are always a lot more films, especially when you consider this is one of maybe 8 or 9 Christmas movies that might be in that top 100. It might just about be at the sort of 90 to 100 kind of mark of all time. As far as the Christmas movies, I think it's around 5 or 6, so not bad at all, but I would always I've got Klaus and It's a Wonderful Life at the top. And then I've got The Santa Claus, because that's mostly for the nostalgia, I think. That was actually one we watched a lot as children with my sisters. And then there's Home Alone 1 and 2, Holiday and Love Actually. And then I think Elf is maybe somewhere around that. I'm not saying that those are better. I just think they give me more of the feels maybe. Whereas this one's I think actually a better movie than those. But
it's all very subjective. So.
Depends what you're in the mood for, yeah.
So as you know, I have a top 100 list, and I only have 3 Christmas movies in there. So
Oh,
I think based on that, this probably is just outside. It's probably 1 to 150 for you, which
mm,
I think you both would have more Christmas movies ahead of it than
yeah,
me. And so, yeah, I think this would definitely be in maybe your top 1 to 200. But for me, I put very similar to you. I put ahead of it Wonderful Life, Klaus, Love Actually, and Nightmare Before Christmas.
mm,
And even those, I don't think all 4 of them make my top 100. I think 3 of them probably do. So Nightmare Before Christmas, I think, is just touch and go. And then I put this for me in like a second tier, or even a third tier. I think Wonderful Life and Klaus kind of sit in their own. But yeah, so
yeah,
second or third tier, I put it around. I put it around Home Alone and Die Hard for me
mm,
personally. So yeah, solid, but maybe it's because I didn't see it young enough or because there's just a couple of little things missing. So definitely a top 10 Christmas movie
yeah,
for me, and sounds like similar for
yeah,
you.
it is.
And yeah, I'd just say solid story. Researching it, it seems like Jon Favreau was instrumental in just getting the tone, the style, all of that just right to work, both for what the original writer had, and it really takes that. All these movies that I study in depth for the podcast, I find that it's so important to have one person at the top, whether it's a producer or a director or someone who's or someone who's doing everything, like a
Mhm.
Quentin Tarantino type thing. Like he harnesses his vision, and because if you don't, it can be all over the place. Like
Yeah,
the script can be in one place, the costumes can. Peter Jackson with Lord of the Rings, another example. You just need someone who has a vision. So great vision by a great director,
mm,
and then great execution by everyone.
yeah,
So Will Ferrell does amazing. All the supporting cast are amazing. All of the crew who built the sets, who made the costume, everyone's amazing. But above all else, I'd say Will Ferrell's performance is like the magic sauce that takes this from what could have been a 3.5 movie to a 4.5, 5, depending on your opinion.
agreed.
Lovely. Well, Sunita, this has been the first Christmas podcast, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you in future years to talk about some of the other Christmas movies that we talked
Oh
about.
yeah, there's at least 4 or 5 other Christmas movies that you'll have me on for.
So, guys, make sure to like, subscribe to us everywhere. So, this episode is dropping in November 2025. Every November from now on, we're going to be dropping a Christmas movie to give you guys time to listen to it before Christmas. But make sure, in general, to tune in on the last Thursday of every month and to subscribe to us on YouTube for bonus content.